So Trump didn't attack Iran. Now, a lot of people wanted to attack it. This is from the New York Times. Trump urged to launch an attack. Trump listened to the skeptics who said it would be a costly mistake. He heard from the generals and his diplomats. Lawmakers weighed in, and so did his advisors. But among the voices that rang powerfully for President Trump was that of one of his favorite Fox News hosts, Tucker Carlson. We made a joke on this show that, hey, maybe Trump watched Tucker Carlson. We made a joke. That's exactly what happened. And Tucker Carlson, who likes to say he's not a powerful person, just stopped a war. Whoa. Guess who didn't stop that war? Jake Tapper, Anderson Cooper, Rachel Maddow, Chris Hayes. Guess who stopped the war? Tucker Carlson. Why? Because for some fucking reason, Tucker Carlson is the only one in establishment news who's allowed to tell the truth about our wars. Isn't that weird? But he's doing it. Rachel Maddow's not doing it. Chris fucking Hayes ain't going to do it. Jake Tapper's certainly not going to do it. Anderson Cooper ain't going to do it unless you can print it on a T-shirt. Here is Tucker Carlson doing it and stopping a war. Oh, my God. While national security advisors were urging a military strike against Iran, Mr. Carlson in recent days had told Mr. Trump that responding to Tehran's provocations with force was crazy.
It's also crazy for the Times to use the term Tehran's provocations.
Yes.
What does that mean? Tehran basically responding to American provocations. That's what that means.
Yes. You mean Iran shooting down a drone that's flying in their country? Yeah.
Tehran,
and by the way, they warned the drone. They warned America twice about the drone being in their airspace. And they just kept flying. And then they finally.
Yeah.
However much weight that advice may or may not have had, the sentiment certainly reinforced the doubts that Mr. Trump himself harbored as he navigated his way through one of the most consequential foreign policy decisions of his presidency. Belligerent and confrontational as he is in his public persona, Mr. Trump has at times pulled back from the use of force, convinced that America has wasted too many lives and too much money in pointless Middle East wars, and wary of repeating what he considers the mistakes of his predecessors. It's amazing that the New York Times even printed that. It's amazing they even printed that much. As Mr. Carlson and other skeptics have argued, a strike against Iran could easily spiral into a full-fledged war without easy victory. Mr. Trump was told was everything he ran against. And so that's true. And guess has the ear of the president? A non-interventionist Tucker Carlson. Thank God Trump doesn't watch MSNBC or CNN or CBS News or ABC News, because they're all beating the drum for war right now. Thank God he doesn't watch Brian Williams. That's for goddamn sure. Here is Adam Schiff. Now, Adam Schiff is lamenting that the problem with Trump is that we can't go to war now because the people in the Middle East don't trust him. He says the evidence of Iran's attack on the ships is strong. So that's a guy lying. It is not strong. It's the exact opposite of that. In fact, it's obvious that was made-up propaganda. So Adam Schiff is a war propagandist. He's a lying war propagandist. He's a shill. He's not a truth teller. He doesn't have integrity, and he is the moral superior of no one. Adam Schiff is the moral superior of fucking no one. In fact, he's one of the worst type of people in the world. He'll lie to the people who vote for him about a war. That's who Adam Schiff is, just like most of the Democrats. And that's why we have Trump. That's why we have Trump. So he lies. He says the evidence of Iran's attack on the ships is strong. That's a lie. We should be leading an international effort to protect the seas and reduce the risk of conflict. That's also a lie. Instead, Trump policies have left us isolated and the region unstable. That is also a lie. The maximum pressure campaign has failed maximally. No, you have failed, Adam Schiff. And here's what Adam Schiff has to say. Here, you want to hear him? This is exactly what you were talking about, right, Aaron? Here, Watch this.
Is there any question in your mind that it is Iran and its Revolutionary Guard that is behind these attacks? There's no question that Iran is behind the attacks. I think the evidence.
So what would you say if you were interviewing him and he said that?
Well, I mean, you'd have to ask him what his evidence is, in the same way that you'd have to ask him, which people really failed to do, when he said that he had seen more than circumstantial evidence of collusion, right?
And he never produced it.
He never produced it. He still hasn't. We're still waiting for it, you know. And then we could also ask him, well, you know, is perhaps the fact that you've gotten more than $70,000 from Raytheon over the course of your political career, to the point where Raytheon even hosted fundraisers for you at Beyonce concerts, where you can see Beyonce with Adam Schiff, sponsored by Raytheon. Has that money and other money from weapons manufacturers, has that contributed to your consistently pro-war stance over the course of his career here and everywhere?
So he's doing this in interview on CBS News. CBS News, their expert on the war is a guy, an admiral. What was his name? Sandy. You texted it to me, right? That link.
Sandy Winnefeld.
So their expert at CBS News is a retired admiral named Sandy Winnefeld, and I'm like, I got a feeling when an admiral retires, he just doesn't stop getting income. And we found out, oh, he just won an election to the board of Raytheon. Guess who didn't tell you that their military expert was on the board of Raytheon? CBS motherfucking News didn't tell you that.
Ridiculous.
They did not tell you that the guy that they brought on to give you the straight dope about the war in Iran is a war profiteer who stands to make millions and billions of dollars on a war with Iran. They don't tell you that. That's why people get their news from YouTube. That's why people have to go to the Gray Zone Project to watch Pushback. That's why, because CBS News is part of the problem. They're fake news. People are worried about fake news. The worst fake news in the world appears on CBS News and the front page of the New York Times and the Washington Post. Nobody ever went to war over a fucking YouTube video. So let's listen to what else, some more shit now this guy says. And you tell me if you want me to stop at any point, Aaron.
This is very strong and compelling. In fact, I think this was a Class A screw-up by Iran to insert a mine on the ship. It didn't detonate. They had to go back and retrieve it. I can imagine there are some Iranian heads rolling for that botched operation. But nonetheless, the problem is that we are struggling, even in the midst of this solid evidence, to persuade our allies to join us in any kind of a response. And it shows just how isolated the United States has become. Our allies warned the United States. I think our intelligence agencies warned policymakers that this kind of Iranian reaction was likely a result of a policy of withdrawing from the nuclear agreement. And so what we see is a split of the U.S. from our allies, and we see Russia and China coming together and having Iran's back. This is, I think, the worst of all situations, and the maximalist pressure campaign has maximally failed and only heightened the risk of conflict. For my colleague, Senator Cotton, to advocate that we attack Iran and provoke a war, that there's no congressional authorization necessary, I think is exactly the wrong answer on both levels.
That's his opposition. He's opposed to Cotton because he wants to go to war without congressional authorization.
That's it.
So if only Trump could ask for congressional authorization, well, maybe we'll give it to him.
Yeah.
And then he talks about we're not working with our allies. It's exactly like John Kerry's failed presidential campaign against George Bush when they've launched the Iraq War, this murderous catastrophe which Kerry voted for, and Kerry's opposition to Bush is that you're not working close enough with our allies. You don't have a plan. You haven't given our soldiers the right equipment. That's our opposition. It's people who assume the legitimacy of using force and bombing countries that we're provoking. And by the way, and criticizing our way of going about that, not questioning the underlying right that we assert to attack people. And he mentions that this results from Trump's withdrawal of the Iran deal, which I'm glad he's acknowledging. But then the follow up there is, okay, so then why haven't the Democrats been forcefully advocating and making that an issue? Why haven't there been protests trying to get the U.S. back in the Iran deal? Because this was Obama's thing. Right. And it was a very positive development. Now, there are some cynical reasons behind it in terms of Obama tried to collapse Iran's economy with awful sanctions. It didn't work. And because of that, we got the Iran deal. But still, it's still, it was a good thing that it happened, and it reduced tensions, and it helped, reduce the suffering of the Iranian people, or it had the potential to. But Schiff isn't talking about restoring that. He's just talking about the superficial tactical issues with how Trump is going about it.
Yeah. He's upset that that we're losing credibility in the region, and that's the term they like to use. Trump is losing credibility in the region. We're losing credibility in the region.
You know what?
Go ahead.
Adam Schiff has lost credibility here in California.
Yes.
Why do I want him in California?
Well, here's also the very.
And wait a minute, I'm so sorry,
Oh, sure.
but the whole point is why I thought Democrats were freaked out about Donald Trump having control of the military. What? I thought they were freaking out. I thought the whole thing is, you want that guy able to push that button and get us into a nuclear holocaust? Do you want that?
They're okay with it.
Turns out they are, because they're all paid by the same
people.
Donor.
Raytheon.
Just talk to us first. Just go ahead, Mr. Trump. Go ahead and bomb them, but just talk to us.
Yeah.
Come on, let
Let
us
us give you
Let us
approval.
in.
So Adam Schiff, who's been running around for 3 years saying that Donald Trump is a Russian asset, that Donald Trump is being controlled by Vladimir Putin and is a traitor to our own country. He's okay with him running our military.
Yeah.
He's okay with that. Well, if he comes and asks us, we'll let him go. So that's how you know these guys. And that's what a guy looks like when he's fucking lying you into a war. That's the look Adam Schiff has on his face when he's trying to lie you into a war. See that look? That's Adam Schiff lying you into a war. That's the look he gets. And that's how I can tell he's lying us into a war. But, he's got his warlife face on. That's Adam Schiff. That's exactly what he looks like when he's lying you into a war. And that's why we have Trump, because both parties are bought by the same goddamn people. And I know a lot of people don't like it in the Democratic Party. I'm very unpopular with the Democratic Party, and I wear that as a badge of honor. And I'm not going to sheepdog progressives into a party that actively cheats them and works against them. That is fucking fool's errand. And anybody doing that should stop. What do you think about that?
Well, listen, I think the Democratic Party is fundamentally corrupt, and I don't want to make, absolute conclusions that it's impossible to be redeemed, although I think that's probably the case. But and
you don't think it's going to happen?
I don't think if I had to bet, I don't think that.
I think Netanyahu will quit and the Democratic Party and just go join the Republicans like they're supposed to.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the problem. People like Netanyahu, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, these are Republicans in any other era.
Yeah. I do think that they are the primary obstacles to actually a just and humane world, because they're the ones standing in the way of creating a real left that could actually challenge the far right and win back all the people who've been duped by Trump and his gang into thinking that they're going to take on powerful interests when they're really not. They're serving powerful interests. But the problem is you have Democrats who are like Adam Schiff, who are presented as the alternative. Well, they're never going to win anybody over, because they're ultimately, as you say, pursuing the same policies, just in a friendlier way and in a more dishonest way, really, because they pretend to be progressive and liberals.
And this really puts them in a quandary, because they have to still look on their face as they're opposing Trump, as they still support a war with Iran.
Exactly.
That's very hard for them to do. And I love Chuck Schumer said, well, I'm afraid he's going to blunder us into a war, as opposed to the well played out planned wars you guys did in Iraq and Libya.
Yeah.
You mean unlike those, you fucking...
Yeah.
In Afghanistan, which we're still there for no reason whatsoever. No one can tell you why we're in Afghanistan.
Well, you know what I think is also interesting is that people forget that there are real sociopaths and psychopaths in government.
That's one.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, they don't really, you can bitch and complain about your boss at work or maybe family members, but it seems like people forget that you might see a movie with a sociopath and you're like, oh my God, or a pathological psychopath. They're in positions of power in our country.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here.
Mostly president and vice president. Mostly that's where they reside. The sociopaths are usually the head of banks on Wall Street, the head of fossil fuel companies, and the head of our political organizations. If you don't think Netanyahu is a sociopath, then you need to go look up that word again, because I showed you how she advocated for stealing the oil of Libya so that people don't get upset and maybe won't want to do our next foreign war like Syria. That was her. That's what she said. And Julian Assange revealed that, and so that's why she wants him in prison. And if you want a journalist in prison for revealing the crimes of the powerful, then you're a fascist. And that's what Neera Tanden is. She's a fascist. And she wants to invade other countries, steal their natural resources, and she wants to put the people in prison who want to tell people about that. That's called a fascist. And so she's one of the most powerful Democrats in Washington, D.C. She's the head of the Center for American Progress, which is one of the most powerful and well-moneyed think tanks in the entire country. That's Neera Tanden. She knows the owner of, the guy who's the president of Google. They're on first-name basis. They could shut me down anytime they want. And Neera Tanden has come at me publicly on Twitter saying that she wants to shut us down. So that's the world we're living in. So that's why there is no Democratic Party. There's a Democratic Party, but it's not a Democratic Party. We have two Republican parties. And then we have people like me who keep trying to tell people we have two Republican parties. And they keep saying, why don't you make fun of the Republicans? I am making fun of the Republicans. They just call themselves Democrats.
Boom.
Yeah. And we'll be fucking right back. So there's more to this. So watch how here's how the Hill covered this, right? So the Hill says U.S. finds itself isolated in the Iran conflict.
Imagine that.
Why wouldn't everyone want to go along with another fucking war in the Middle East that we want to do? Why wouldn't they? It's because of Trump, I bet.
Yeah. Goddamn Trump.
Goddamn Trump. Here it is. As for the tanker attacks, one need not be a Trump supporter or a hardline Iran critic to believe that Tehran was behind them. This is the Hill. For one thing, such attacks would signal a return to Iran's maritime mischief. Maritime mischief.
Oh, maritime mischief, yes.
Mischief.
Yes.
Axis of evil, maritime mischief. Maritime mischief of decades earlier, which prompted the U.S. Navy to destroy half of Iran's fleet in 1988. They leave out that part where we took down an airliner, passenger airliner.
Passenger airline, and we're also supporting Saddam Hussein as he was gassing Iranians and murdering
and the
them.
Kurds.
Yeah. But again, like basically every time one of these pieces invokes a historical claim like that, it's false. It's just false. But everything, we're such a propagandized culture that all these things that are taking to be, that all these things that paint us in a benign light or in a positive light are just taken to be truth. It's just truth. Like you don't question that,
right?
And the problem is there's only there's so few of us who are challenging propaganda. So like you see claims like this, and it takes a research effort to go back and correct everything. And that's how. But they get away with it because they just lie and they assert that they can just repeat historical lies by virtue of the fact that it serves the ruling class.
So this is how, to me, this is what Orwell talked about when they would go and rewrite the past in the history books.
Yeah.
So that's what this is.
Yeah.
So they don't literally take out a history book and rewrite it, but when you go and they present history, it's whitewashed.
Yeah.
And so this is the history that the establishment is presenting you. Iran has been up to mischief all the time, maritime mischief. And they leave out that
Sounds like fun. Like I want to go and participate.
And that was after after we'd overthrown their democratically elected president and put in a puppet, which was an oppressive guy named the Shah, and they got so sick of him. What happened? Oh, they got a right wing theocrat to be their leader. Oh, that seems like when. That's what happens when people are desperate. They're vulnerable to right wing despots, demagogues, theocracies. That's how we got Trump. People are desperate. In 2008, people voted for hope and change. In 2016, they did the same goddamn thing. For another, even House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff, a fierce Trump critic, acknowledged the overwhelming evidence that Iran is to blame. See, so everybody agrees. Everybody, even Adam Schiff says so. And there's Adam Schiff. Today, a group of us met with the president of Iran. We urged him to de-escalate tensions and avoid miscalculation. Iran wants to drive a wedge between the U.S. and our allies. Iran's the bad guy still. Iran's the bad guy. Iran's the bad guy. We got to stand with Trump. Should we stand with Trump? Is that what you're saying, Adam? I also reminded him there's no congressional authorization for war with Iran.
Even the way he writes his tweets are so annoying.
It's annoying.
Yeah, he's the most like smug. These programmed. Right? Yeah, and of course, again, so the issue here is that Iran wants to drive a wedge. Like, what is he talking about? Iran just wants to not be suffocated, and it wants the U.S. to respect the nuclear deal that it pulled out of, and to stop trying to make life miserable for its people. Leave it alone. And again, there's no congressional authorization. Yeah, okay, great, Adam. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Adam.
Yes.
So that's like when he says that's like a bone to his Democratic base. Like, we still have the power over Trump. Yeah. That's what that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's the New York Times. Here's what they say. President Trump's last-minute decision to pull back from a retaliatory strike on Iran underscored a lack of appealing options to counter Tehran's nuclear program. What the... Again, Iran's the problem, and we got to do something. How can you not do anything? You have to do something. That's what they're saying, right?
Exactly, because respecting the agreement that you entered into that would totally restrict Iran's nuclear program, that's not an appealing option. It's not appealing to respect your own agreements.
Right.
So what else is there? Right. Geez, like what else can I do? I don't know. I guess I got a bomb. And by the way, there is no nuclear program. I mean, they do under the deal they're allowed to do some enrichment, but in terms of for power, because that's what countries do.
Yeah.
And they had this. They negotiated for many years to work out the scheme for that, and everybody was on board. Russia took part. Everybody's down. And then, and when they talk about a nuclear program, they often conflate that and try to make that try to suggest that Iran has a nuclear weapons program, which they don't. U.S. intelligence concluded a long time ago that Iran has no nuclear weapons program because they calculated that there's no point for them trying to get one, and it wasn't worth their energy. So they haven't even been working on one. They don't even have a nuclear weapons program. But again, it's assumed that they want one, and it's assumed that we have the right to just withdraw from a deal that restricted a possible nuclear program in the future, and then mull bombing because we don't have any other appealing options.
Well, look, I love the headline here. If you can't read it, I'll read it to you. It says, facing intensifying confrontation with Iran, Trump has few appealing options. Facing intensifying confrontation with... You mean the U.S. is ramping up military action with Iran. Where are we doing that? In fucking Iran. They're not here in the Gulf of Mexico. Iran's not over here. We're over there. So this is called radicalizing people for war. YouTube doesn't radicalize people for war. The New York Times radicalizes people for war. This is how you do it. So now everybody's afraid of fake news and people getting radicalized by the right on YouTube. There was no YouTube video that ever led us into a fucking war. You know what does? The New York Times front page every goddamn time. Here's another one. The New York Times. Republicans lost no time comparing President Trump's decision to call off a missile strike on Iran to Barack Obama's shelving a strike against Syria in 2013. But the comparison overlooks important differences. No, Barack was right, but Trump shouldn't have called this one off. This is fucked up. I mean, this is Iran. I mean, they did something to us, and now we're going to lose our street cred. What the fuck? We got to kill some motherfuckers, or else we're going to lose credibility in the region. And if you wanted to come join the Crips, we'll take you. That's what this is.
What's funny there, too, is they mentioned Clinton in 98 backing off of bombing Iraq. Okay, yeah, he did, but then he bombed it, not that long after that.
Right.
So maybe the New York Times will get their bombing just like Clinton did.
Fuck. It's just amazing how they can twist. Just like Chomsky says, the facts are in there, but you got to hold it sideways and up to the light and shake it a little. Because the way they present it always radicalizes people for war. And New York Times will never lose their YouTube channel or their social or Twitter account or their Facebook page.
No.
They can radicalize people for war all day long. And they do. Not making it up. It's right there. We don't radicalize people for war, but we're dangerous. Hey, we just added St. Louis and Honolulu to our live tour schedule. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all the tickets for all our live shows. We might be coming to your town. Go check right now at jimmydorecomedy.com. And if you like the show and want to support it, become a premium member. You can become a patron or through PayPal, or go right to jimmydorecomedy.com and become a premium member. That's the best way. We'll see you at a live show.